Hello, hello. Morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing good this morning. Hope everyone's rested and ready to go. Because yesterday was crazy. And I can't imagine it's not going to be any different today. Hopefully, it's going to be a little more tradable versus just complete chaos. Because there was movement, but even looking back at yesterday, it was really choppy and like just all like volatility all over the place in terms of up and down. We'll look at it in a second. Um, but it was just, I mean, even on a 15-minute chart, it just pretty garbage yesterday ended up being. It's of course hindsight, you could try and find spots to make money. But while I was trading and even looking back on it later in the day, it looked even worse. So, this morning looks pretty choppy too. Kind of see what's happening and what's going on. Definitely kind of in this like very large wedge pattern. If we break those lows, we'll maybe go to these. Break these lows, maybe go to these. Definitely, if we make kind of one more push up, could be like a big head and shoulders. Be interesting to see if that ends up happening. Morning, everyone. I got a fun little drink this morning compared to I still have my tea, but I don't have a mega large cup. Oh, great. I already spilled some of this fun drink on my mouse pad. See, oil's not really doing much either. We had that sell off yesterday, and then it just completely reversed it. I mean, it's just, oil's still just sideways chop. I think things will start to heat up with oil if it starts pushing these highs. If we start getting up to the 110s per barrel, I think that it'll start to get a little more interesting. Um, and we could get some more volatility from that affecting the market. Um, and see if there's some actual downside pressure from it if it's going up, and some inverse correlation between that and the major markets. Could I show how to implement a trailing stop loss on NinjaTrader? I an automatic one I haven't really done myself. One thing that you can actually do on NinjaTrader that's really nice is let me pull up my main chart. If you just click on the like trader tab here, well, if you go to like your ATM strategy and pull up the parameters, you should be able to hit F1 and it brings up a NinjaTrader like help area. And so I would assume in here there's got to be, yeah, there's auto chase. And so this will walk you through how to set up an automatic trailing stop. To pull this up again, anywhere in NinjaTrader, if you press F1 on your keyboard while you have that certain thing selected, it'll pull up the exact NinjaTrader support help guide on that section. So that'll be a really easy way for you to find some helpful info on that. Because I've never really done a manual or an automatic trailing stop. I always do a manual one. Like my charts didn't seem to save yesterday, or at least some of the settings. Kind of a funky downtrend here on the NASDAQ. We broke it yesterday, but like here it's still kind of, I won't necessarily, if we pop up actually to this trend line, I might take a short off of it just because it's kind of respecting it. I'll pay attention to it, but definitely aware that it's not huge. Another kind of thing, interesting thing to maybe think about is like here, we could just get a pop up and continue lower, kind of a fake higher location on the S&P 500. Just kind of marking the pre-market little double top we've got going here on both of them. Kind of seeing what that looks like. And my charts didn't seem to save yesterday. Did I try ever using order flow? I never have. You know, I've kind of just got what works for me, and I've looked at volume and stuff before, and to me it just didn't. You know, maybe I could have gave it more time, and I'm sure I could find a way to have it help. But frankly, like what I do just works for me, and you know that's all that matters. Like if order flow and volume kind of you like that, and it adds a little bit more confirmation and comfortability for you, by all means use it. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. Trading's all about what works for you. You know, it's not about what anyone else is doing, what anyone else thinks. If you can find whatever works for you, that's all that matters. You know, we're all slightly doing things slightly different. We'll have slightly different trading personalities. And you don't want to get, you know, pulled in by someone, you know, some videos saying, oh, this is the secret indicator, because not really true ever. Definitely things can help, but there's always going to be times where things like order flow or volume give you not a good signal, you know, where it's like it can bait you, just like anything. You have to learn how to read the good and the bad signal. NinjaTrader isn't working in Lebanon. Yeah, they're slowly, from what I hear, they're slowly expanding globally, but it's gonna take a while. But I'm sure hopefully there's other trading options out there. Let's see. It'll be interesting to see. We've got this like little pre-market range here. Be interesting to see us actually break this, and see what happens when that happens. Just looking at kind of the big picture. I actually want to just make a new window for this. The ES on the daily here. Definitely got a good, on the daily chart, good little top here. I think the question is like, is this kind of just, is this it? Or, you know, to me, this looks like a good little topping pattern, you know, and I think we could give it back up to down here. Kind of been talking about that for the last couple weeks. NASDAQ looks pretty much the same. I think the Nasdaq, and this was an unhealthy move, kind of a final crazy push higher after this. I totally see a world where we pull back to here. I don't know what that looks like. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be 2 days. We could seriously get moving to the downside. And so keeping that in mind, that things are shifting from this just never ending uptrend by everything to, okay, the moves up are starting to fail more. So definitely important to kind of be aware of that. In terms of looking at news, haven't really looked at news yet for the day. There wasn't really anything crazy this week, from what I remember. Today we got pending home sales. That's not really going to do anything, I don't think, unless there's some crazy change. Just to double check here, pending home sales doesn't normally do anything. Um, Tomorrow, actually, we do have FOMC. Was that there yesterday? I feel like I would have noticed that. Huh. It must have been. There's no way it didn't just, they don't just have a random new FOMC meeting minutes pop up. Either way, having that tomorrow is big. So that I don't think that'll affect today, but it could, the fact that the market's been choppy this week already, maybe in anticipation of this. Um, and then, I guess we'll just see. So I think, because definitely tomorrow, that's going to be huge. I mean, I think the market will likely be not doing any crazy moves until then. Doesn't mean we can't get some good volatility today, but definitely that could have been a part of a reason why yesterday was a little crazy and all over the place, but didn't really actually move anywhere. Yeah, Nvidia is tomorrow as well too. I don't know if there's any other big tech earnings tomorrow, but obviously Nvidia is a huge, especially in terms of the Nasdaq and how much it's going to move. That's a huge stock to have their earnings released. So I don't even know what Nvidia is doing pre or up into earnings. I mean, it looks like it's running up into earnings really, really strongly. Um, but it is having a pullback over these few days. So I don't try and predict what's going to happen at earnings. I try and just see and then, see what the chart tells me. Um, there's no way for me to really, I don't really follow the company. There's no way for me to really predict what's going on. They're constantly beating their earnings and having higher growth and everything, which you would think, okay, well, it's going to do good, but that that expectation is priced in. And so that can cause it to actually be overbought. And then when the earnings come out, they don't have as good of a forecast as people expect. And then you can have it go down 10 or 15% because of that. And so that's a very tricky part about earnings. Morning, everyone. Do I take partials? Not very often. Right now, I mean, even at my size, like yesterday, the market is so volatile that my stop has to be wide enough that I can literally only trade one or two contracts. It's kind of crazy. In terms of big picture, I mean, I think we're just kind of in this sideways wedge. We might have another choppy day today. Um, with the market waiting for FOMC tomorrow. And so, we'll see how things open up this morning. We've got definitely we had a nice little unhealthy move up pre-market and then a sell-off. We're kind of just sitting in this range right here on the 5-minute. Got a kind of unhealthy move up here, sold off, move up, sell off. We could definitely give this is a pretty big sell-off overnight. We could, if we bottom, I think this would be kind of the target for the day if a long trade sets up, is looking to have this move down reversed. NASDAQ is pretty similar. It's almost cleaner. But right now where we're at, I don't want to take a long. I almost want to see it make new lows and have that fail and it come back up above these lows. I'm actually going to mark these again because they're kind of, you got the lows from over here, but I feel like these ones are kind of important too. I think if we break these and have a failed breakout, that's a really great signal to the upside. But with how the market is, I also want to be aware that we could sell off because this is a pretty big downwards wedge. And I definitely think the door is open, big picture wise, to continue lower. There's not really great targets other than these random lows and maybe this high here. I think it'd just be stair step down. If we start selling off, it'd just be stair stepping between all these levels. And it'd be hard to trade in there if it just starts ripping. Maybe you can get something on a pullback if there's a clean area and it's clear. But like yesterday, things were just insane for anyone that was here. Like looking at yesterday again, just to kind of see how things played out. On a 1 minute. It's right here. We had this kind of decent little bottom here, but we were in the middle of the range, shot up, and then sold off. And then to me, this looked like it actually might be bottoming and going higher, but then it just went kind of into this wedge, and it got really choppy right here, and then it ripped. I saw this right as I closed my stream yesterday, and I was like, oh, it's probably going to the lows. It did eventually, but like this was just heinous. And I wonder if I was on, would I have looked for a long here of like, oh, well, it might just do this again, or just have a big move in reverse. So I mean, just yesterday is just really crappy movement, if you ask me. And pre-market, it's kind of similar. If we try and think about the market is most like a lot of the times, the first couple hours pre-market can still help you kind of predict what's going on. And right now it's like we do not have that much movement. There's some movement and then we go into chop. Moves between kind of these levels, but it's very slow, methodical. Wouldn't be easy to trade in this. I'll wait to see kind of what things open like. And the NASDAQ's a little bit better in terms of movement, but it's still definitely like chopping at these levels before it kind of moves between them, which makes it kind of hard to trade. And I definitely want to see how the NASDAQ opens. What platform is this? This is called NinjaTrader. There is a link in the description. If you want to check that out. Got like 10 minutes till things open. I don't work with prop firms. It does take, yeah, on Schwab. The problem with a lot of the big brokerages like Schwab or I'm not gonna name all, but they don't have small intraday margin requirements. They require a lot more versus NinjaTrader is, and there's other platforms too, but NinjaTrader is probably the biggest one um, that have like super small intraday margin requirements, which is allows you to trade a really small account to where it's, okay, it's only $50 to get control over um, a micro futures contract for the ES. Do I think we'll have a good reversal trade today? I think it's I think there's definitely big potential. I mean, we have really good movement in the market. Thinking about yesterday, um, we have crazy moves, and so it's a lot of the I think the trading right now, especially like what started last week. I felt like last week we completely shifted out of what we were in, um, and kind of went into this mode of very volatile. Um, like this week was just like very volatile, like fast moves that were hard to read. But if you did potentially catch one, um, the upside would be huge. And so it's been very FOMO-y, but I think now it's still in that state, and this week almost seems even more. Like yesterday, the volatility we didn't have as crazy of move yesterday compared to maybe like a V bottom like we had last week. We had two of those, almost three actually. But yesterday the candlesticks were actually huge. I hadn't seen candlesticks that big. Um, I don't know, maybe in a few years. Like the ES had a 15-point candlestick. Maybe we had some of those that big at the start of the Middle East, but it's just been super crazy, and so there's definitely big potential. I think the hard part is trying to dodge all the landmines that the market has right now too. So it's like it's very good for trading, but it's also very, very tricky. And so that's why it's like I don't want to just kind of get complacent and sit here. I want to be very dialed in. Um, because again, I think the possibility of good stuff is there. It's interesting. This is doing kind of a fail breakout here. I wonder if this will set up like a head and shoulders right at the open. The ES is kind of doing the same thing. Again, I'm not going to take a trade pre-market. If it sets up perfectly like in the first couple minutes, we'll see. NinjaTrader looks different and easier to read. I do really, every platform kind of has their learning curve, but I do like the simplicity of NinjaTrader. I mean, granted, it's because I don't have like 5 indicators on my chart compared to some other people, but that's to me why I like it as well. It just makes things a little cleaner. Um, anyone just coming in? Welcome. Good morning. Apologies if I don't miss any questions, or if I do miss questions. Not missing any would actually be pretty hard. So just to run through things real quick this morning, we're just in this big wedge right now. The market's been pretty crazy. Yesterday was even crazier, I think. We have FOMC tomorrow. And so, and we have Nvidia earnings. And so I think tomorrow, kind of later in the day, there's just massive news that's coming up that I think is unlikely to allow big players to kind of do what they want. Um, in the sense of like, there's just so much potential tomorrow afternoon for news to change the direction of the market that it's very likely that we just don't do much into that. The flip side of that, I think, is if people are nervous about this news because of the uncertainty, there could be a lot of people closing out positions and we sell off actually, with the idea that not wanting to hold through this, the market's already being kind of toppy, big picture. I mean, this is kind of a big head and shoulders. And we're kind of like at the neckline here where it's like, okay, if we kind of start breaking this, we could start cascading down between these like support zones. And they're pretty minor support zones to where they could get blown through pretty quickly. And so I think it just kind of depends on how that plays out. I don't think we're going to necessarily go up before this tomorrow. And so that's going to be really kind of tricky going forwards today and tomorrow of just like yesterday, for people who were here yesterday, the market had crazy good volatility. It looked really good for a trade, but it was almost too crazy, and then it was too back and forth. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of what that looks like. And currently, we're kind of in this sideways range. It's almost like a bear flag here, actually, and it looks like we're breaking lower. I would be interested in a long if we've already broken this low, but the idea is if we popped back up, and essentially this was a fake lower, because I do think, especially it's a very fast move down. I think we could pop up, hit here, maybe sell off from there, or punch up and break this. Just because I don't think the market's going to go up big picture does not mean that volatility like this can't happen. So I think there's opportunity both directions. To the downside, right now it looks like we could just open up and sell off. And to me, that's not tradable. We'll have to wait to see. Maybe we pop lower, come back, and then look to go to continue lower. Some kind of pullback, reversal, continuation reversal. But so I think it's going to be a tricky day, and it's going to be very important to be kind of pretty nimble, and be aware of not getting sucked in on what some crazy moves that could happen. Knowing that yesterday there was crazy moves and crazy potential when those moves didn't really pan out. Just because there's movement doesn't mean that you can profit from it easily. If it comes back down and makes another bottom at the same place, would that be a good signal? Basically, what you're saying is like a double bottom. It's gonna be hard because, like, again, today it feels like a depends question. I think if it made a double bottom like this and then made kind of a higher low, I would be into getting in on that. I was kind of talking about this a little yesterday, but if we have a bounce up and it comes to, let's say, like 50% of this move right here, this range pops up here, that's definitely a spot where it could just be pulling back and continuing lower. And if it does that, I want to be aware that, hey, it might just do a little bounce here, and I don't want to get baited long by that, thinking it's double bottoming. Instead, I want to, see if it fails to continue lower, and if it does, it makes a higher low here, then I would potentially look to get in long, on something like that. Because to me, if it's a double bottom like this is just there's a lot of tricky ways that it can be kind of a bait. because it's almost like it's retesting, and you have to see if that retest is actually failing or not. So market's open. No surprise, opening volatility here back to the middle of this range. Again, like I don't want to do anything at this open. You know, I mean, like as you can see, this is a crazy. Is that 100-point candlestick? It's not quite. It's like 90 points. It's insane. On the ES, we're looking at. I mean, it's close to a 10-point candlestick. And so it's like that's crazy. That's just sit on the. That's why I don't like trading the open, especially right now. Is like sure you could hindsight you could be like, well, it made a double bottom here at a support. I should have just gone long. Um, you know, it's just like the opening whip right now is just so insane. I think it's better to kind of see what the market's doing, kind of get a feel for things. It's just better to be on the cautious side right now. It's better to miss trades, I think, right now than be chasing trades because I think it's for me at least. I feel like it's I'm more likely to lose money trying to be too aggressive in this market because it's just all over the place. Yesterday was 110 points. Yeah, that's crazy. So clearly the volatility isn't gone yet. And what's interesting here is the NASDAQ has given back this whole range, and the ES is still just trying to actually make a new low. So, you know, if I pull up my reversal checklist here, that's not a correlation. They're not being correlated, which is not good. Definitely an unhealthy move. Trying to just look at this big picture. I mean, if the NASDAQ spikes all the way up here, or even in this trend line, I'd definitely be looking for kind of a 15-minute, this red line, kind of a 15-minute unhealthy move reversal. Hard part is the ES here just kind of sitting here. Kind of got to see how this move plays out. Crazy opening move. Sometimes it's just crazy to just watch when the market's like this. It's just crazy to see like what it can do when things are just so volatile. Because it's definitely, you don't see this every day. And it's very easy, I think, to let moves like this change your strategy in terms of trying to adapt and be too aggressive to take trades like this when moves like this happen so infrequently. Now, I definitely think the slight adjustment I will take is if this looks like it's going to reverse, I will be a little bit more aggressive about an entry. I think a good comparison, actually. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Where is it? I think this day right here. I think this was last week sometime. I don't remember. We had a crazy move up in the NASDAQ right from the open, and then it kind of just did this. And I think in hindsight, I think it's okay with a move like this to be a little more aggressive to jump in once it kind of does this kind of candlestick formation with the idea of looking because it's moved so fast, it's likely if it does reverse to get going to the downside. And so that's where I would be interested in being a little more aggressive with not waiting for a specific, very clear reversal. And but also on the flip side, I would be doing smaller size for sure. And so the ES here is kind of just selling off. Not really doing much there. In terms of checklist, I think the trend bias is, I can see the market go any way today. I'm okay with that. In terms of the correlation being actually kind of inverse right now, because the ES is going down, I think if the Nasdaq looks like it's going to reverse, I'm okay trying to look for a reversal here. Now, I'm not going to do it yet. I actually do want to see kind of a lower high here because of that inverse correlation. With the sense of, well, the ES could actually be doing a little failed breakout here and could pop up. And the fact that this just made a new high, definitely, I think it's that initial quick reversal is kind of drying up, but we still could make one more push up here to this actual reversal zone. This is definitely just a pretty clean breakout pullback off of the overnight highs here. So that's a pretty healthy pullback. ES is just really doing nothing right now. If I did take that trade, how much would I make? I'm not sure which trade you're talking about, but right now my risk that I put, that my trading size is about $1,500, at least for full size. It can go up to like 1,700. A lot of what I've been doing recently is doing smaller size though, like 2/3 size or half size. So I generally try and go for 2 or 3x. A lot of my trades recently have not been going that far. So 1.5 to 2x is like 1 to 2k. The ES is starting to catch up here. I don't like a long off of this either, even though, I said I can see that this could be a little fail breakout. Even though it's like, I almost think sometimes like a trigger word is I can see it doing this. To me, that's almost like you're trying to convince yourself to get in. Because with this being super choppy, I think as soon as the Nasdaq slows down a little bit, the ES is going to pull back. So just kind of watching to see this trend up in the Nasdaq, when and where it might slow down. Ideally, it comes up to this level. Actually, this is not on my chart, but right now we're at this major downtrend line too. So I think that could be a potential spot where it slows down. That's definitely interesting to see. Did I go live yesterday? Yes, I did. Pretty much live every day of the week if I'm trading, which is generally 4 to 5 days a week. The ES does not necessarily, talking about correlation between the ES and the NASDAQ, it can totally go either direction in terms of which one is leading, and which one is better to trade. A lot of times I just like to see them doing roughly the same thing. The ES is starting to kind of catch up a little bit, so that I like that. And so, but the NASDAQ is clearly, the correlation isn't 1-to-1 today. Just probably because tech is a little bit more volatile right now. But sometimes the NASDAQ will lead, sometimes the ES will lead. And I think the big thing is try not to read into the difference too much. when I first started, I tried to read into every micro movement, and that just actually wasn't very productive. Because sometimes one can be leading and then one can be following, and then it will switch halfway through. The main thing is I just want to see, okay, are they roughly doing the same thing? And then which one do I want to trade based on the volatility? Yesterday I did take a trade. Market was crazy. I don't know if you've looked at it. Even like this morning. I mean, how many points have we moved since the open? Like this candlestick was 100 points. And then from there, we've gone up another 100, 150. Basically 200 points total from the open, which is crazy. And this does looks like it's kind of topping out here. But to me, this was too fast of a reversal. I would have wanted to see a couple more chop candlesticks here, maybe a bait higher candlestick. I don't want to just get short here. The size is just so big. It's definitely at a spot where I wanted to see it reverse. And it looks like it is. But to me right now, it's just the sizing is so big. Even at full size, with one contract, I'm at max size. And right now in this market, I actually want to be a little smaller size. A lot of trading is about actually risk management. It's very easy to get greedy and think, well, actually, if this moves really well, and goes 3x, I would love to be full size because you'd get a big trade. But a lot of times that's not actually happening right now. And it's very easy for this to kind of pull back here and continue higher. And actually, I would be okay against short if this did a little head and shoulders right here. To me, that would be a good little reversal potential. Because this is where I see market got excited, pull back, healthy move. This is actually probably 50% of this move right here. It's exactly 50%. I want to see a little bounce, essentially attempting to continue this uptrend. And if that fails, then it actually essentially just taps this line right here as basically making a pretty clean head and shoulders. To me, that's a nice signal. And then I think once it kind of breaks this low, it'll probably just flush. But I don't want to jump in right here without that pullback because to me, that's too aggressive. It could just pop here and continue higher. I don't have a good spot to put my stop. A big thing is having a clean spot to put your stop that makes sense. And I like to put it, for a short here, I'd want to put it above a swing low or swing high, sorry. Basically a lower high than this one. And to me, that's kind of trading with the trend. And the ES here is pretty much at lows. Like it's testing the overnight lows here on a 5-minute. Definitely to me, it looks like it has good potential to continue lower. But I'd want to see this pullback before doing anything. And if it just sells off, that's fine. It's not about catching every move. To me, it's about catching the moves that fit my strategy. And slowly adjusting to things and adjusting to the market if it makes sense, but not going crazy because that's how you become inconsistent and just you're just trading randomly. And it's hard watching it do what you want without a signal. Gonna kind of click through these a little bit. But that's, I think, to me, that's building that discipline of not forcing things when sometimes you miss out on good trades. Other times There's a lot of times where I save myself by being patient and not jumping in. ES is still just kind of slowly trending lower. Definitely got just a little bait with the ES. On a 5-minute for the NASDAQ, big thing is we're kind of coming down to this area where we could find a little support. We really cleanly stole off of this trend line. ES is just sitting here at the lows. Now, keep in mind, this could flip to the upside too. You know, this little sell-off, we actually could bottom. We are at a major support level here. Just because we're making a little bait higher in a sell-off, doesn't mean it's going to pan out. I want to try and be aware of that too. Of even though I'm kind of looking for a short here, I could see this recovering this and then continuing higher. We've seen that going back to actually that example I had earlier of looking for kind of an aggressive entry after that move up is even this move right here, big spike, pull back, and then actually bottomed and continued higher. I want to kind of be aware that it could happen both ways. Hard to see that just sell off and kind of do a nice clean reversal there off of a spot. But in the sense of looking for a bottom here, this is a huge reversal candle, which is extremely similar to the bottom and pullback that I literally just mentioned from the previous last week. And that's a 100-point candle right there. And so to me, I'm not going to just buy long on that, but I definitely like that as a potential bottoming signal if it kind of wants to do this. And as well, keeping in mind, this happened yesterday, is we had some initial volatility, and then we started to just chop and go into kind of a wedge. And so, you know, sometimes we'll have crazy moves like this, and you can't really trade them. And then, you know, you start thinking, okay, well, there's a lot of volatility. I want to take a trade. But the volatility is done and it starts to dry up and chop. So I want to be aware of that and not get baited into that either. Going into today, you know, my big thing was market's crazy right now. It's crazy volatile and it's very hard to trade because it's just having these whips back and forth. And my strategy isn't aggressive enough to take advantage of these. And it's hard to see it and not be able to profit from it. But it's not necessarily something that happens very often. And so a lot of the time it's better to just save your capital for the next day. But looking at that previous move, just because I really like how similar it is this move had a big move up here, sell off, big reversal candlestick, and it actually made a double bottom, and it kind of had a move up, and then started kind of an uptrend from there. So I want to be aware of that. But also yesterday, I really find it helpful to kind of see what the market's done because it helps you kind of predict what's going on. Yesterday we had kind of this for the first up until 10:30. We pretty much had a move, volatile back and forth, and then it made one more leg in the direction it had in the morning. Um, and so to me, if it did that today, here's your move up, volatile back and forth, and then maybe we make one more leg higher. ES is just kind of doing the same thing of just see if there's any like trend lines that it's working with. Um, this is volatile right now. It's crazy. Do you think ES is going to tank? I don't know. As this day goes on, I'm starting to think that it's just, I mean, look at the big picture. Big picture, we're literally just sitting in this wedge. NASDAQ is, clearly we're like still pushing lower. So I could see if we push this, we do push lower a little bit more. But I don't think we're going to have an outside crazy downside move. Just with tomorrow having FOMC and Nvidia earnings, it just seems more likely we just continue to doing this volatile garbage. And it's hard to watch though, it's hard to think in hindsight, oh, I should have been more aggressive. I should have gone in here. Um, but to me, that builds really bad habits. I'm just looking at this bottom because I do like this candlestick as a bottom. I think I would want to see the one more kind of test. Um, it's just hard too because right now it's like it just seems very choppy. But I like it as a big bottoming signal. Hard part is I would just like to be smaller size. If I did the ES here, I don't even want to have my stop right here. This would be a tight stop. I guess technically I can go one contract on the ES. But then, if I put my stop below this low, which is where I see the good signal, the risk reward ratio is just not worth it. Maybe I could pull my stop up a little bit here, maybe below this low. But still the risk 1-to-1 is up here. Like 2x is all the way up here. To me, that doesn't seem like very good risk reward, even if I'm right. Just because I need to have a wider stop because we're volatile. Even if it bottoms here, it's very likely that we could have a pullback like this, and I don't want that to get knock me out. I can't do MNQ. I could go all the way to the micros. It's definitely a thought. And it might be something that I do need to do with how volatile this week is. A little move here. Should have taken the NQ breakout. It's really hard to know because you know what? In hindsight, it could fly up, but in other way, it could just reverse too. I mean, I think even if you just look at the chat, everyone is saying something completely different, which means there's just so many signals that are saying one thing or the other. And to me, that just means that there's no clear signal and that it's more likely that it's just chop, or just very, very tricky to see. Um, I mean, let's just like do a poll out of curiosity. Poll's only going to be on the main stream, main YouTube long form stream. But like, do you guys think we just go up here, down, like major trend, major direction for the day? Or are we just going up, down, or sideways? And it's just because it's and again for scalping, if you're a scalper, there's definitely moves in here that you can get. But I'm not a scalper. I'm looking for more. I'm looking for moves like this or moves like this. But now it's just we're starting to go into this chop. And it's, you know, I can see a lot of reasons for either direction. Like I can see the reason for the long is this is a nice failed breakout bottoming candle. You know, you could say this was a little pullback. It kind of retested this. Kind of, you could see maybe a head and shoulders here. And the reason why I didn't get in on that is just because, okay, putting my stop right here seems really tight. You know, hindsight, it looks fine now, but I could have got in here and it could have easily hit this trend line, pulled back, and then maybe continued higher and knocked me out. I would have needed my stop a lot farther lower. And then, you know, it just makes it so the risk reward just isn't great. And even then, like it seems like it'll probably come up here and could sell off. Or it could just go back and forth. So the poll, we've got, where'd it go? Huh. It was pretty dead even. It was literally 36, 30, 32 or something. And so it's super back and forth. And so that's the biggest thing is when things aren't clear, you don't want to be forcing a trade because you're most likely forcing it out of FOMO. Like forcing a trade here, you know, I kind of saw this signal as a potential bottom, but forcing it to me is a FOMO that, oh, it's going to just go crazy higher. And yesterday, you know, the major trend bias, I think, is more likely to just chop. And right now we're starting to go into this wedge, which is what it kind of seemed like we were doing. The ES almost is in this like outer wedge, this expanding wedge. We're at 10 o'clock here. That could cause up a little shake here. The hourly downtrend is what's conflicting you to buy. Yeah, I mean, like if you look at a bigger picture, especially the NASDAQ, I mean, the NASDAQ cleanly hit this downtrend on a 15 minute. You know, there's a pretty clean downtrend line, and we just tapped it and ripped. And on a 15-minute chart, if this candlestick closes, actually it just closed. I mean, that's two pretty big wicks to the upside on a 15-minute. Just looking at oil. Oil's not doing anything. You know, and then like to look at a 5-minute here, just as some noise is kind of, I mean, a 5-minute, we've almost made a lower high. ES hasn't, so there's not correlation right there. If I uncheck that box, I'm just gonna uncheck everything. To be honest, like things are just all over the place right now. And definitely in chop, yeah, someone just said like if you are in a trade, you want to be tighter about your trades. You want to get out faster, like going for just a smaller profit, but also to an extent that sometimes makes it not even worth it to get into a trade. If you're saying like, okay, normally I want to, if I jumped in a trade, I want to go for 2 or 3 times, but most likely I'm only going to get one. That's you have to be, right 60 or 70% of the time for that even to be a profitable trade to take. It's not about thinking about will this exact one work out. It's about just thinking about the math over time. And it's like, on a day like today, it's like the math just doesn't work out a lot of the times. And the ES is kind of getting a little bit more of a reversal here. Past 10 o'clock. But again, for anyone who just missed it, we literally just did a poll and 500 people did the poll and it was literally split. 30% thought we were going to go up, 30% thought we were going to go down, and 30% thought we were going to chop. Obviously, doesn't make 100%, but you know what I mean in terms of it's very split. And I already think it's just not very good signal right now. Now, granted, yesterday, a lot of times around 10:30, we'll get a little bit more movement and clear. Like we'll break out. We've had this morning volatility, dries up, and then it gets going again. And so there, I think we might, like yesterday, if you look at yesterday, basically the same thing happened yesterday. Move, volatile chop, and then around 10:15, 10:20, we actually had a move. So I think that's what I'm trying to potentially wait around for. Is okay, do we break out of this? And is there a potential trade that sets up based on that? Why am I looking for a long when we're in a bearish market? Because right now on a daily or on a 1-minute chart, we're not necessarily in a bearish. We are in a back and forth market. So you can still, and I think we could go either direction. Big picture, we are down, but also if you look at a 5-minute chart, there's so much back and forth potential. I'd be looking for something like this. But I'm also aware that we could break the lows and sell off. But it's also just, having the discipline and patience to avoid forcing a bad trade in this choppy market. And that's the hard part about trading is every day and every week is different. And so you have to be very flexible to what the market's doing. And not, last week was really good and bring in that idea that this week might be good too. Because right now, this week so far has been horrible. I mean, the volatility is crazy. The first candlestick or second candlestick of the NASDAQ was over 100 points. And that's crazy volatility, but it's almost too much volatility. Yes, making a head and shoulders. Yeah, kind of. But again, like to me, this isn't. NASDAQ could be making a double bottom here. But it's like also I don't want to try and read into this head and shoulders too much because frankly, it's I think that's reading into the micro patterns, and which is okay when things are moving, but when things are more choppy like this, it's more likely to give you signals like that that just don't play out. You know, it is testing this area, and the Nasdaq is kind of, well, it broke this, but it's kind of making a double bottom, and so I think there's ways to convince yourself that it could be bottoming, but to me, it just looks like it's selling off right now. It kind of had this choppy move up. Now it's kind of having a choppy move down. Maybe on the ES we'll make a new low here, kind of hit this downwards wedge. And then the NASDAQ kind of might be retesting the actual lows. And maybe we set up something there. But if it just rockets or it just ends up being choppy, you know, that's just, you don't want to force something, right? How about oil? Oil hasn't been doing much, to be honest. Oil's just been kind of sideways choppy. I haven't been looking at it that much. Um, just because to me, oil is just the markets aren't super correlated anymore. But I think as oil climbs here, if it starts getting to like 110 a barrel and starts pushing all-time highs, then I think that will be important to look at. And you know, big picture, like I think this is on the Nasdaq for sure. This is a pretty good 5 minute like double top here, and it looks like we want to make new lows. Now it could just be, it could make new lows barely and do another fail breakout. That's totally possible. Oh my God. So it's kind of getting moving here. ES is kind of getting moving. Timing is everything. Yeah. Yeah, sticking to your strategy is really hard in crappy markets. But it's you know, it's what works long term. I'm not here to just take a trade every day for content. Let me know if you guys have any questions while we kind of wait this out, see what happens as it bottoms here. You do need to just do a normal YouTube subscription to ask questions. And as well, for anyone new, if you go to my YouTube channel, I do have a ton of tutorials on my strategy, how futures work, how I draw my zones. You'll be able to find a lot there. So if you're interested, you know, you can come in to the next stream, kind of understand a little bit more about what I'm looking for, what this checklist means. Because I'm live stream every day of the week at this point. How do I set my fib tool settings? I literally just use it for the 50% level. So it's not that fancy. And then other than that, it's just random little color adjustments and stuff. But to me, like looking at for 50% pullbacks, I think is a very clean level. With Fibonacci, you can get, you know, there's all the other levels that you can really dive into, but I just look at the 50% because again, I think that's adding too much. I would be interested in a long down here on the NASDAQ if we made kind of this. Do I trade gold? I don't. I literally just look at the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. One of the hardest things about being a trader is knowing that there will be more opportunities, and waiting and watching is so important. Yeah, I almost thought about think of it like a skill almost of like, okay, today is a day where I'm practicing being okay not taking a trade. Because I think in the beginning, it's so easy to get so fixated on, oh, I want to make X amount a day, or I want to take X amount of trades a day. Because it's, it's easy to think that, oh, well, I'm sitting here for an hour or 2 hours. I want something to show for it. And that's not how trading works. If you sat here every day for a whole year, and let's say an extreme scenario where you took one trade in the whole year, but you made, $100,000 from that one trade, who cares, Like at the end of the day, it's about making money long term. It's not about trying to just make money consistently every day. That's just not how trading works. Like if you've watched it for, just been on the stream for the last couple of weeks, you can see how things can change and adjust. And there's times where you want to be aggressive and times where you really just need to be patient because you're more likely to lose money. News for tomorrow is FOMC and Nvidia earnings. There might be other earnings, but those are definitely two very big ones. I definitely kind of like this spot. This is definitely like a nice little fake lower on the NASDAQ here. But just with how the market is, I don't want to jump in on that signal. Just because we could just be in this downtrend. To me, that is a fast, aggressive signal. And I would have done that maybe up here a little bit. But down here now, where I think it's the bigger trend could be trying to push us lower, I need a little bit more of a slowdown, maybe a pullback. And again, if I do enter, maybe I like the NASDAQ, and maybe I need to switch over to the micros, because even going half size, like 750 of risk, is 6 micro contracts, and that would actually allow me to scale out if I wanted. It allows me to be a lot more accurate. Obviously, I don't have any zones here because the drawings don't move over. So I kind of got to redraw them a little bit. Pretty much we've made a new low here, though, on the NASDAQ. And if we do bottom here, I think there's decent risk reward. At least I think 2x is possible. If I run up into this guy. Sorry for not moving on from the questions. Kind of, this does set up. I want to be ready for it. ES is kind of doing similar. If this kind of does a fake lower and does a head and shoulders, I like that. ES is putting a little double bottom. I'd want to see, this is where kind of the correlation, not really an unhealthy move today. The correlation has kind of come back into play in terms of both of these markets are kind of double bottoming and moving down. NASDAQ is clearly making another low. What would be a clean, choppy, what would be a clean, not choppy chart? for good opportunities. Honestly, a clean one would have been if this guy popped up here and we just had a head and shoulders like this, or not a head and shoulders that just made a lower high. I would have jumped in short right there, looking for a move down. This was very close. A lot of these opening volatile moves are very close. This is getting cleaner. This kind of move is a lot cleaner of a move in terms of, there's a clean trend line I can see. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. And also, if you go look at my YouTube videos, I've definitely got recordings of trades that you can see kind of some clearer price action too. Do I find the hardest part about being live is finding things to say? Not necessarily. A lot of what I talk about, to some extent, especially when a trade is coming, is stuff I would say already. Like a trick that I learned is essentially talking through things out loud. Like if you're nervous or feeling certain emotions, talking through them out loud and why and what you're feeling actually helps not let them control you. So like if you're feeling nervous or doubtful about something, kind of talking that out loud actually makes it easier for you to not let an impulsive move happen and to do something that you're going to later regret. The big thing about trading is not letting your emotions control you. And that is a big thing that to me helps me do that. Biggest behavioral habit that helped me become consistently profitable. I think the patience, like right now, literally today, having the patience to watch today because there's still opportunities, but not be baited into spots or FOMO into spots where things just aren't quite there. It's the spectrums of trading is like on one end, when you see a really good trade, it's so obvious. You jump in because everything's perfectly clear and it usually works out amazing, right? Your best trades are always the easiest. And then on the flip side, let's say the market's just doing this, it's super obvious to not do anything, right? The hard part is the middle between those two areas, that gray area where it's like, okay, well, there's volatility, but also it's kind of choppy. And so it's very easy to that unsureness and kind of that middle ground to end up doing something and forcing to do something. Because when you are unsure, it's more likely for you to do something impulsive because you feel like you're going to FOMO or miss out because you don't have a good read on things. And that lack of clarity makes that easier. Fill out the NQ checklist. I mean, pretty much the only thing I haven't done, I guess you could say, is the unhealthy move. I mean, if we look at a 5-minute chart, there's a couple of fair value gaps here. This is definitely a pretty good move down if it wants to reverse. We've got this trend line in play though. Honestly, to get a trade, I would want to see it do this. It would need to do a head shoulders, come back, test this level right here, and then go higher. Because otherwise, the possibility of it comes up here, test this, and continue to sell off is very possible. In terms of this is the previous, support level that now could turn into resistance. And so I would like to see it kind of test that and then look to see that fail. But this could also just be getting the trend could just start going for a little while. How many hours is it required daily to master a market or strategy? That's such a depends question. I mean, I think it definitely takes months or years to like really get a feel for um, the market and your strategy. And honestly, the biggest part is the emotional side, and that's where it's very different for everyone in terms of some people. Everyone just starts out in a different emotional spot where it's like, oh, they have good habits that are good for trading, and some people, um, they have to do a lot more work. I had to do a lot more work. I felt to work on things and emotional triggers that negatively affect your trading. To me, a lot of the time it was the fear of being wrong, and so I would stay out of trades. I would chicken out essentially on jumping in spots that were um, good that I should have been in. It's crazy that I'm looking for just longs. I'm looking for longs and shorts every day. I was looking for a short near the highs. And then it kind of just got choppy. And now it's like, okay, I'm looking for a long near the lows. It's a lot more about the extremes of, okay, we're at the extreme lows. I think the opportunity is to the upside. If we're at the highs, I'm looking for an opportunity to the downside. Um, and today it's we kind of had this yesterday where moved choppiness and then it kind of just broke lower. And to me, I didn't see anything that made me want to jump in up here just because it's just didn't set up how I wanted. But you can have so many times where a move like this, it looks like it's just going to continue lower and there's this massive downtrend. And people get sucked into looking at the big picture of like, oh, well, there's this massive downtrend. We're just going to sell off forever. But if you look at, there's so many moves up in this downtrend. And so being flexible and being able to look for both sides, I think will help um, you be unbiased and be able to get opportunities on both directions. The platform I'm using to trade is called NinjaTrader. You can find it, link in the description. Yeah, it was kind of a double top, but there were signals here that it's like, oh, it kind of looked like it could go up too. And then it was starting to just get choppy too. Like if you look at the ES here, the ES was just kind of in this choppy wedge too. Um, I'm not going to be perfect every day. I'm not going to catch every move. It's not about being perfect in trading and being able to perfectly read everything. It's about when you do get in that you're right more often than not. This tool is not a Fibonacci tool. It's a risk reward tool that is specific for the NinjaTrader platform. It sold off like I initially said. That's the interesting part too about trading is like you can be right about the direction, but not necessarily see a way to jump in. And I'm definitely trying to get a little more loose with my entries recently because I think um, that's how I've been trying to adjust to the market. But to me, getting in like the top of this move was right here. If I scroll back, like getting in short right here, saying that this is a double top, that seems like a stretch to me. Um, maybe if you're really looking at the big picture, but there's so many reasons that it's like, oh, this is just doing this, and I could be buying in at the bottom here. And maybe it eventually plays out, but to me, it's like it was just getting choppier and choppier. And hindsight, that's where hindsight is well, like obviously this was a double top now. Um, but to me, this wasn't a spot I wanted to short. I really liked here. but it just kind of ripped. And then on the ES, I mean, this, right here, we were looking at, oh, this could be a head and shoulders. And it was actually looking like it was going to break higher. And then it started to slow down. And then it, started this trend lower. But here you could say, oh, well, it looks like it's probably going to bottom here. It didn't, and it just kept going lower. So it's been tricky today. So for leverage and stuff, I don't use leverage technically. I trade futures. And so they don't necessarily have leverage, but the way they're set up is there's a lot of leverage. Like to get this trade, if I entered in here with 5 contracts on the MNQ, I think it's that would be $1,000 of margin that I need in my account. And so with like a $2,000 account, I could put on $700 of risk here and capture a $2,000 trade if it went up here. Kind of bottoming here. Interesting enough, actually, the ES is literally touching the bottom of this. To me, that looks like a trend break. We are looking at big picture. We literally just broke this. I got this trend line from all the way back here. Support zone, actually, sorry. Question is, do we just come up and kind of tap this and sell off? As kind of a stair-step pattern move down. For the NASDAQ, similar kind of stair-step thing that I would be looking at. I actually didn't have this drawn. But there's this guy. I'm going to pull across. Oh, that was on the wrong chart since I'm looking at the MES or MNQ. We're kind of bottoming here. I want to see it kind of pop up here and pull back, essentially. Make a higher low. Because it's very easy for this to do a little bit of a pullback, break this trend. But on 5-minute, this looks like the 5-minute, like the big picture on the 5-minute, I want to see it essentially test this low. On the NASDAQ, that level is very far away. So on the ES, I'm kind of going to be looking at that here. And the ES, that is, to draw a level off of it, that's pretty much this, where it literally just touched. And again, I'd be going smaller size because I don't think it's worth risking a huge amount. I'd put my stop below the actual low here. Because the potential for continuing to the downside is definitely still there. Just basically looking for kind of a little bit of a reversal signal. And it's not going to be super clean, it looks like. Ideally, a little bit more of a punch lower here would be great. Because otherwise it just seems like it's just kind of a sloppy pullback. And I don't want to get baited in on a sloppy pullback. But I also don't want to get too nervous and not enter. Because I think if this is going to bottom, this is probably it. We're at kind of 10:30, which has been kind of a reversal timing recently in the last couple months. And again, to kind of reduce the risk and the intensity, smaller size. Is kind of there. You know, to me on a 5-minute on a NASDAQ, this kind of looks like a little bit of a lower high. And so again, the idea is if this kind of breaks that, it's making a higher high, and we could start an uptrend. Sorry for missing all the questions. Kind of got drawings all over the place. Feels a little. I definitely like that. I'm gonna put in at the right amount. Yeah. Okay. I like that as the bottoming candle. ES is kind of the same. I'm just gonna put a buy stop in and get filled if we push higher. You know, and again, like talking about breathing through things and nervousness, you know, I'm a little nervous on this just because it just feels like the market is all over the place. But again, that's why you size, and I'm sizing to kind of reduce that risk. And again, being methodical about following my strategy. Holy cow, that stop is too small. That was close. I had the wrong at the money ATM system there. ES is kind of very, very similar. I'm just going the NASDAQ because it's a little more volatile. I like this as a higher low. You know, essentially we put in a bottom here, a higher low. Kind of going through the checklist now that I'm in a trade. The major trend is, you know, looking at a 15-minute, yeah, we are in this big downtrend. And we have broken this kind of to the downside. But I think there is potential to push this back up because there's so many back and forth moves. You know, here it broke this, you know, low and pushed back up. And so I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then the ES and the NASDAQ, they weren't correlated earlier, but now they are. So I like that in terms of predictability. And then reversal zone. The ES is the one that has more of the reversal zone. To be honest, the reversal zone isn't great here. That's one reason why I'm kind of smaller size. But I am looking kind of for more of a failed breakout of this. You know, the idea is that we're down here, we're potentially failing, and we come back up into this area. And then unhealthy move, if you look at a 5-minute, we've kind of got some, it's not a crazy huge unhealthy move like we had this morning, but definitely looking to see that potentially play out. And then clearly this trend that we were down in on a 1-minute chart is broken. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for here. And then reversal pattern is kind of this higher low. And then I'm smaller size. I'm putting my stop all the way at the lows because I think that this might take a little while to play out. You know, if we look at this top here, this took a while to play out. Essentially, I am thinking that the idea of this is that this is the bottom for right now. And we might just start to kind of give some of this move back up, even if we kind of push up into, even if we just go up to here, the 50%. And it might take a while to get going. And so I don't want to have a tighter stop. I want it below the extreme here. And then I'm smaller size because frankly, I think this is 50-50. I think this could easily still continue lower. But that's where the math is coming into play, the risk reward. I think it's, if we do go up here, I think I can probably get roughly 2x. And so, but I think the risk right now is that it just did this little bait higher and sells off and knocks me out. So that's the tricky part about trading sometimes, is you're not right every time. You know, I think my win rate over the last couple of months has been like 60%. And you know, right now it's scary because it's pulling back, and it's always nice when a trade works out right away, right? But there's nothing to do. And a big thing to keep in mind is um, the trade outcome isn't as important. It's about, did I enter in when when my strategy told me to, when I wanted to. I didn't jump in based on, FOMO or anything, um, stuff like that. It is a little later in the day, which is something to consider. I do kind of generally say like the first reversal of the day is the better one. So that is also kind of going against this. But again, I don't want to try and analyze it too much. A big thing about trading is, um, do what you can while you're trading, and then afterwards, when you have time to kind of analyze and look at things, then you can think about it and be like, okay, what could I have done better? Did I do anything wrong that, I shouldn't have? Stuff like that. Like for me, did I FOMO into this trade or take this trade because I'm streaming? And I, felt like I just needed to put a trade on, or was it too late in the day and I shouldn't have taken a trade then? Or was the signal not quite there? Stuff like that. But I don't want to try and think about that too much right now. And I don't want to manage it yet in terms of reducing my stop. I need to see it. It needs to start to break up first before I'll maybe trail. Again, looking at a 5 minute though, like this looks pretty, it's not out of the woods yet, but I think if it kind of breaks up here, this is definitely a slow momentum of this. And so the potential for it to reverse increases, I think, as the momentum slows. Um, Obviously, it could just slow here and continue lower. But the idea is here, let's say it's 50-50, it goes up or down. And if it goes up, I get paid 2x. And if it goes down, I lose 1. And so that's where kind of the math is. I'll just switch this over to the correct chart. So I'm just going to leave this on a 5 minute for a minute, because looking at that 1 minute, I'm definitely kind of feeling the little intensity and just the stress right now. And so I want to just look at a 5 minute. The 5 minute is a little easier. You're not looking at every tick move. Um, the ES looks pretty dang similar. Trying a bottom here. Again, I think the question is it going to hit this low and sell off? That's kind of the major resistance it's running into. But really, it's just, it's just kind of, it's doing this slow bottom. NASDAQ's doing this slow bottom. Where can you get the checklist? I actually do have, if you look at the description of this live stream, I don't know if I can try and pull it up. I have a free PDF that you can get that has the checklist in it. I'll paste it in chat. It's just, you just have to put your email in to get it. But it's free. It literally is like a multi-page PDF that kind of walks through my checklist, my strategy, kind of what I'm looking for. So that's kind of nice to have on hand. And then as well, if you go to my YouTube channel, I have videos that walk through everything a lot more. Same thing with futures and how they work. Definitely if you're kind of new to my strategy and everything and trading futures, there's a lot more information there. It's harder for me to do that during a live stream and when I'm trading. This is kind of to show you what it's like in real time and reading the market every day, because obviously it's different every single day. Still just kind of just still in this pain area. That's how trades have been recently. They just really take time to get going. And I don't know why today I just feel a little more nervous. Every day is just slightly different. Some days you feel really good and confident, and other days, I don't know, that just the mentalness isn't there as much. Today I feel a little bit more nervous, but what I'm really happy about is I traded great so far. I didn't jump in here when I didn't really see it, and when I did see it down here, I didn't, like I was talking about earlier, in terms of my big issue with trading is, you know, being chicken in terms of not jumping in when I see my strategy. Um, and so that's all you can kind of do at the end of the day, right? When do I replace my, is this an A plus or B setup? I would say this is more on the B side, um, because it's later in the day. I think the whip is, I don't think we're gonna have as big of a whip. I think this was more pushing A plus setup area if we had a little pullback, because really I think what makes the A plus part of it is the unhealthy move. Like here, this is to me not as much of an unhealthy move. Like I could totally see just not having this checked off. Um, this is much more of a methodical move. This is much more of a just, okay, I'm seeing a bottom here. And I think it's still worth a trade because I want to capture whatever kind of move this has. But my, A plus setups where the market has a drastic move like this, where they can just rip really fast, those are the easy trades where it happens super fast, because of that serious unhealthy move. I'm only in a position on the NASDAQ and actually the MNQ because the sizing is just so big today. I want a half size. I want a decent wide stop. And I couldn't do that trading a normal contract size. Quite a delay on my chart. There should be a 3-second delay on the stream about. But if you're seeing more of the delay than that, it's probably on your end. Right now, I'm seeing a 4-second delay, 5-second delay on the stream. That's about it. And I can't get any better than that. I have it on as fast of settings as possible, where there should be as little delay as possible. Did I miss the short move down? There just wasn't a setup for me. And at the moment, it's not, it hasn't moved up enough for me to move my stop. Because with how this could easily pull back down to here, kind of retest this zone and then go up. I need it to, again, it's in that crappy spot where it's just kind of slowly doing higher. And it could have we could have a little stop grab, right? Where it just flushes and then rips. That's been happening a ton recently. And so there's no reason for me to move my stop. We could have, the fear obviously is that this is it. It topped here and now it's just going to sell off and continue lower. That's a part of the risk of the trade, right? I need to see it break this high and push up here before I even think about moving my stop here. And even if it pops up here, I'm not going to go break even yet because honestly, it could pull back here before it continues higher, right? I want to try and give this trade some wiggle room because to me, again, I'm looking at the big picture here, the 5-minute chart, right? The 5-minute chart has started a bottom here, but on a 5-minute, it could do a pullback right here and push higher, and that still looks great. So it's, you don't want to, I don't want to read into these micro movements too much. I'm in this for the larger picture. And granted, the NASDAQ did come up here and test this low. That was one area of concern of the trade. But to me, it's not it's not at a spot where I can really move my stop up yet. The ES is kind of similar. It kind of basically came up and tested this area. And we totally could sell off here. And maybe if it pops up, down, pushes up and makes a double top, then I can start to move my stop up and reduce some of the risk. But right now, I don't see a reason to do it. It'd be so easy to overmanage this and stop myself out sooner. It's very easy to want to take risk off the table, but the thing is, like, okay, I reduce my risk by half, but then I could be getting knocked out, and I lose 2x, right? You got to think about the risk reward of, like, is it worth it saving a little bit of money, when the signal's not there yet? It's very easy to get sucked into that money side of things, wanting to cut your risk, when to me it's still in an uptrend right now. It's still making higher highs and higher lows. Like, I do see signals that it could be going down, but it's still in that no man's land of it could just be in this kind of chop right now. And it could go either direction. And to me, the risk reward, the math is still there of, okay, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I lose $800, but if I'm right and it moves up, I make 800 to 1500. And then if we do get a crazy move, unlikely, I think, there's always more upside. This is the NASDAQ futures I'm trading. Nothing really to do right now. Again, it's like looking at a 5-minute. If this candlestick recovers, that is a sick looking higher low on a 5-minute chart. The ES has actually made a new low, but it could turn out to be just like a slight new low. Again, I'm just, if this doesn't work, it doesn't work out. I'm happy with the trade. I think it was a good potential spot for a long to happen, if it was going to. Does not look jolly. It does not look jolly right now. But there's literally been trades where I've had my stop too tight. It's done something exactly like this, and I've got stopped out and it reversed up. And having a wider stop would have kept me in the trade. And it's hard watching moves like this, but that's just a part of trading. And if it loses, I'm okay with that. I'm happy with the trade. It's smaller size. And if we start to just sit here and chop for like another 30 minutes, then I'll maybe start to thinking about reducing my size and getting out at some point. But again, right now, I think there's no reason to do anything. I think it's either going to go down and stop me out here, or it's going to bottom. And this will be a nice bottom. If I ever get stopped out and the trend looks like it's going to re-enter, I don't like to get stopped out and then re-enter. Um, Usually, I would say my trades when I enter in the first time is the better entry. Obviously, sometimes if I mismanage and have too tight of a stop or something, I'll get stopped out, like that kind of example I just mentioned in terms of my stop is too tight. Um, but like here, if I get stopped out and it looks like it's going to bottom, to me, it's if this was going to go up, it would have either happened here or if it bottoms here, that'll be it. But if it stops me out here and then kind of continues, I think it's very infrequently that it stops you out and then continues, especially if you have a wide stop. I think at that point, it's your win rate is reduced because you are kind of jumping in again when the initial signal didn't work out, right? You're already basically saying, okay, I think it's going to bottom here, and it doesn't. Um, to me, that's a jumping in kind of in a risky situation. And so I like to just call it once I kind of take that initial setup that it doesn't work out. And I don't like to take another stab at it because, especially when I was first starting out with this strategy and kind of figuring it out, is taking multiple stabs. Essentially, most of the time, either your first entry would work and you would take a win on the day, or if your first entry didn't work, a lot of times your second entry wouldn't work. And so it just opens the door to a larger loss day when you're, essentially, if the theory doesn't work initially, I think it's unlikely to really play out. And so um, that's kind of my thought process there is I don't like to take another stab. Would I move my stop loss up to the last low? Essentially this one that we're bottoming at right now. Yeah, I think once we kind of get going like just a little bit more here, I'll probably move my stop up. The ES is looking a little more bearish here. But again, on a 5-minute, actually, I don't have my little candlestick indicator here. I think if this closes bullish, this is a gorgeous looking double bottom on a 5-minute. Literally the flip side of this. Trade might take a while, right? Also, the ES did make a new low. The ES looks a little bearish. Got to keep that in mind. It could just kind of drag this out. I think moving my stop up to here is totally fine. I think if it tops here and makes another stab lower, especially if the ES is making new lows, yeah, I'm okay getting out. Sure, I'll take. I don't know what that would be. Like $100 risk off the table. It's not that big of a deal. And maybe I'll move it back to the lows if it just feels like it's kind of just chopping. But yeah, I mean, still nothing really to do that much. Do I intraday trade more than one trade? Not often. My whole system is I show up for obviously today I'm trading longer because I'm in a trade. My whole thing is I show up for the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day. If a trade shows up, I take it and I move on with the day. I don't want to sit at the charts all day every day. And I don't think most people do want to do that either. And I've actually found it's easier and more profitable to do it for a short period of time because your decision fatigue gets less and less as the day goes on. It's pushing not 11. 11 Eastern. And it's just like it's been a long time I've been looking at the charts. Are you a psycho if you've been sitting in front of the screen for 3 days straight? Not necessarily. Definitely when I was a kid, summer vacations, I played video games 16 hours a day, every day for a while. Maybe that's psycho. But I mean, like definitely now it's like I don't want to sit in front of the screens all day every day. Um, I would rather, get us the system that works to where it's like I can be profitable and make a good amount of money as I scale up more and more, um, and just be doing it a short time. RuneScape, I definitely played RuneScape for a while, and good old 2005 or 4 when it was just coming out. Is this a Head and Shoulders? I mean, I think it's a double bottom of some kind. Again, I think we're just at the ES. I think is looking pretty good too. The ES had a little stab lower, lost the momentum, barely broke, baited people to the short side. I could see the ES just ripping up to here and in this tiny little unhealthy move. The NASDAQ kind of already doing that. The NASDAQ looks better right now. And not on a 5 minute, it's kind of just in this choppy range. But I think if this double bottom holds and we kind of break above this high, it definitely opens up the door to up here. On the NASDAQ or the ES here, same thing. Obviously, it's a little bit lower though. Like it needs to pop up here, break this, and I think that opens the door to pushing back up here. I do want to keep in mind actually trying to think about, is there any funky downtrend lines that things are playing out like that could damage my trade? Really, I'm only just seeing kind of these, like this resistance level here on the NASDAQ. There's not really a different 5 minute level. I guess there's this level as well. ES, pretty much the same thing. This massive zone here, I'm going to try and reduce this a little bit, just so it's a little clearer. There's that right there, but then there's also, I think that's good enough. So Fritz, for the setup with the high around 940, isn't there already a lower high that you were looking for just before the 10-minute mark? What am I missing? I think you're talking about kind of this lower high or this lower high. The reason why I didn't like this to the downside is, so with this move up here, I'm looking for the reversal of that move, right? This is a great unhealthy move to the upside. And so for me with those moves, I always assume, okay, it's going to get reversed. And so I was kind of looking for a quick entry up here because it looked like it was going to top out, and then it sold off really fast. I was almost looking for a little entry right here. And then but it just kept going lower. And it essentially, I would say, gave the majority of this move back up, right? Like it didn't give all the way down to here or down to here. But to me, this is it giving the majority of the move back up. And so when it popped up here, I don't see this lower high as a way to jump in on this to capture this reversal potential. To me, this is more, okay, I think the bigger picture trend might be pushing lower. But that's kind of where it came into play of, well, the ES was being choppy as well. And so there wasn't like good correlation there. And then as well, this was being choppy. We had this massive bullish candlestick, which to me was a long signal. And so it started to get conflicting signals. And then also just the fact that, I mean, the big one was the fact that it gave back a lot of the move, right? The easy money I'm looking for if I jump in up here is I'm looking to get in up here kind of near the high and then try and get 3x, 2x, 2 or 3x on this move lower. And it already did that. And so to me, the move had already played out basically. Sorry if you asked that earlier and I missed it. It's hard to keep up with all the questions, but I hope that answered it for you. Well, for all the doubters, I mean, this is why you follow your strategy and stick to it. I mean, things, obviously, I'm not out of the woods yet. I'm not moving my stop to break even yet because I think we could definitely pull back here. I would definitely have a some kind of mental stop of I'm okay holding through a pullback here, but as we get going here, we'll kind of see what that looks like. But that's why you don't trail your stop up too tight. You keep it at the extreme. Um, it's just that's a part of trading. It's you got to stick with the kind of the read and the mental side of holding through that and not tightening up and managing. That's hard to do sometimes. It was definitely hard for me to do today, especially with, you know, people saying saying things in chat. But that's just a part of the game, right? So definitely in a spot where we could struggle here. But again, it's like I'm just gonna see if it does this. I don't want to trail up and capture a little bit of money here. Um, the ES, that's not a great candlestick to me. We're definitely not out of the woods of this just selling off. But I think at least the ES definitely looks more bearish. The ES just looks, it's kind of whipping back and forth at the lows here. But as long as the NASDAQ, I don't care about the ES. As long as the NASDAQ, I'm in the trade on the NASDAQ. As long as it pushes higher. And I think if it bottoms here and breaks this bearish candlestick and makes this new high, I will go break even. Or maybe below this low here. Because to me, this is an attempt to go lower. If it was going to have a pullback, that was a great initiator. But if it reverses that and continues higher, to me, that's a good spot to move up with this. ES is doing the exact same thing. Again, trying to think about the 5-minute big picture. Looks great to the upside. And also, as well, I think a reality check, is thinking about the last couple of days and last week, is that this could have a good move to the upside where it pushes 3x. But also, if we start to accelerate here, I want to be aware that we could just kind of reverse, and I might just want to get out with 1 or 2x, somewhere in here if it starts to slow down. But it's like the hard part too about managing these is you've waited so long and held through this horrible pullback, and then now it's getting going. I feel like I want to start. I get the emotion of wanting to take profits and get out with what I got because I waited so long. And this is only when the market could start to accelerate. When this trend could actually start to pick up. What level am I targeting? Honestly, on the upside, I think there are so many resistances on the way up that I'm just going to be playing with seeing how things play out. There's this big downtrend on the NASDAQ right here that we tapped earlier. So if we definitely come up to that, I'll be getting out aggressively. I don't think we'll get up that high. Honestly, I think I would be perfectly happy with 2x on this trade. It's really going to depend on how this plays out. ES here, the same thing. I'll be looking at the ES here and seeing, okay, how are we reacting to coming up? Because this was just a chop range. We could come up anywhere up here and start to do this as well. Hey, thanks, Almakab. Pretty cool that you're watching from Turkey. Appreciate everyone being here as well as always. Obviously, this week and trading recently has been very hard. Definitely not out of the woods on this trade in terms of if it's even going to be profitable yet. I want to give this thing wiggle room because I think the 5 minute looks gorgeous. Big picture though, to kind of zoom out too, is like we still could just be testing this and selling off. You know, I wanna give it some room to potentially have this be a failed breakout and push higher, but I don't want to just get married, and I want to be open-minded that this could just come up here and just sell off, you know? Um, and if that's the case, you know, that's kind of happening right now. It's kind of, you know, it's looking, it totally could do that. And so in terms of where my stop would be, I'd probably, if we, I'm just going to try and clean this up a little bit because it's just all crazy. Um, you know, we've broken this little uptrend line we were in. I want to give it room to pull back because I think trying to just see if there's any other trend lines that we're following. You know, this is a spot where I'm going to expect a little resistance. So I want to give it a chance to pull back and that pullback to fail. Because I don't want to get spooked by a little pullback when, you know, to be honest, this is a great, this pullback right here, an attempt for the market to go lower, was such a good signal to the upside. I think if we were going to really continue lower in a strong manner, this would have just kept going lower and I would have got stopped out. Doesn't mean it can't happen now too. But I want to give this a little bit of room to like, in a way, pull back to this. Like this is where the market kind of slowed here for a second. If we really read into the micro moves, market slowed here, popped up, made a new high, and I think pulling back down to this area is completely healthy if it's going to continue to go higher. And so I have to be patient and let this do that if it's going to do that. Now, if it just rips lower, that's a risk. But, you know, that's part of it. And it's hard having my stop basically at full risk right now, when the potential for this to sell off is there. But again, I got to give it a couple of candlesticks here to see what it's going to do. Because it's very unlikely that it just rips lower. From Ethiopia? That's crazy. Welcome. Still nothing to do here. ES is looking pretty much the exact same. You know, again on the ES, like it could just do a pullback here. Like it could literally just do a pullback here and push higher. And so I don't want to get scared and spooked right here. You know, 5 minute double bottom here, lower high, higher low. You know, nothing really to do. Couple people from the Philippines. Trade Bitcoin. I only focus on trading the S&P 500 futures and the Nasdaq. If this pops up here and tests this, I'll be okay going break even. Because to me, if it double tops here and breaks this low, I am okay getting out. You know, if this is just going to be choppy, I gave it a go. I've given it wiggle room, but I don't want to give it. There's a fine line between giving it a good amount of room to play out and getting married to the trade and not getting out when you should. Now, you know, there's always the risk it just breaks this and goes higher, but again, it's like if it's the longer it's choppy, the harder it's going to be to actually profit. But the ES here actually just made a new high. That looks really good. And so I think at this point, I'm actually going to move my stop up below this low, which is pretty much break even. Why is my unhealthy move not checked? Because we had to be honest, I don't think this was an unhealthy move to the downside. It was methodical. To me, this was healthy. Doesn't mean I didn't like the bottoming pattern. On a 5 minute, there was kind of an unhealthy move. There was one little fair value gap here, but to me, it wasn't really as much of an unhealthy move compared to this move we had. This was a clear unhealthy move in the morning. And so that's why with this trade, I went half size. I'm being a little more wider stop. I'm understanding that this is going to take time to get going. And so that's kind of a change I've been doing recently is I've kind of been doing, full size. I would do on an unhealthy move like this, looking for it to reverse. Didn't set up, so I didn't enter. And then on moves like this, they're more of B plus setups or B setups. And so I still want to jump in on them, but I'm understanding that it's going to be slow. It's not as high of a win rate. The risk reward ratio usually is worse because I have to have my stop a little wider because I entered in right here on this trade. And if I had a tight stop here, I would have got knocked out. And so having my stop below this low was extremely important. And so being able to have that wider stop is easier with smaller size. Do I trade minis or micros? Right now, because the market is so crazy, I am actually trading the minis. I actually have not traded the minis in a long time. But if you look over here, the NASDAQ literally opened with a 100-point candlestick. This candlestick is huge. And so right now, just because of the volatility, I can't trade as many contracts. But I'm still targeting the same risk amount. So that's why I reduced to the... I always get them mixed up, the minis and micros. Like, could they not make them slightly, like they're both just a small word? Like, can they make it something else? But I'm trading the micros. Yeah, that naming choice was not ideal. Yeah, so like if this tops here and sells off and breaks this low, I'm okay getting out at break even. I could see it doing a little pullback here and continuing higher. The ES is looking the exact same. But I think if this does a double top here and actually starts to sell off, I think it's more likely to open the door to actually making a new low. And the fact that it's just choppy and not playing out, I'm okay just kind of being done for the day and not, I tried. I jumped in when the strategy said, and you don't know what the market's going to do after you enter in, right? That doesn't matter, sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it doesn't. The things you can control is when you enter and then how you manage the trade. And obviously managing it fluidly like I am is very tricky because there's so many ways to trail your stop up too fast or be make a mistake, right? What's the difference between the micros and minis? Just sizing. The micros are 1/10 of the size of a mini. But sometimes if the market's small, I would have to trade to get the sizing I want. Because I like to full size is like $1,500. I would have to trade like 30 micro contracts. I'm still blanking on the name. My brain's getting fried. But that, there's commissions tied with that. And so if you're trading like 30 or 40 contracts, the commissions are a lot. Versus when I can just trade, instead of trading 30, I can trade 3. The commissions are better. Do I sell partials? I don't normally scale in or out. But I've been seeing spots where it has kind of made sense. Like if this shoots up, depending on where it goes, I might just close everything. But if it shoots up and I see the potential for it to pull back and continue higher, maybe I'll take a partial here, knowing that the pullback could be kind of deep, but I like it to the upside more. And so it's like, okay, I want to take off some here because the risk of it pulling back and maybe doing this is there. And so I want to kind of get out when it makes sense. I'm just going to go break even here at this point, just to be break even. Again, this is that bottoming pattern. It's literally just breaking through this resistance level here. This is where it could pop up, pull back, and start to accelerate. Same thing with the NASDAQ is a little bit more methodical here of just making higher highs and higher lows. Again, I think it's too early to ratchet up my stop and get out. Again, I'm not getting into this trade for 1x. I want to be at least trying to target 2 or somewhere in the middle here. Otherwise, frankly, getting in this trade, if I just got out at 1x, would be a loser long term. Because the risk reward and the percentage of it working out probably wouldn't math up. And so ideally, we can kind of pop a little bit and I can get out at, if this kind of starts to run like this, I can use kind of a trailing stop and get out wherever that decides to slow down or reverse. Knowing that, there could be big upside, that this could be a big picture bottom, but also realizing, I don't need to capture the whole move today. The market's crazy this week. If I get a 2x in this market, I am perfectly happy. Why am I comparing the NASDAQ and the ES? Because they're so correlated. To me, I like to use both as a signal. Even though I'm in the NASDAQ, I want to be seeing how the ES is moving because they're just so correlated. Had the same trade on the ES and it got stopped out. Yeah, that's just crappy luck. It happens. That's the hard thing. We're trading one, like the NASDAQ could have made a new low and ripped where the ES could have not. And so like I traded the NASDAQ because to me the ES felt a little more I think bearish and just kind of sloppy toward I felt like the NASDAQ had more volatility and higher chance to rip higher. But again, it's very hard. It's such a depends on which one is actually good to trade at the time. Trying to look at, see maybe a trend line here. There's not really an upwards end, but seeing if this kind of holds if we pull back here. Just slow grind higher. And again, we could start to slow down and just chop. Again, going into today, I figured that it was going to be most likely choppy and not great for trading. In the sense of we might do something like this, just with the fact that tomorrow has a lot of news coming out with FOMC and NVIDIA earnings. The market might want to just start to kind of sit. And not really do much. Now, if it just, and so if it stays in this clean trend up, I'm going to capture it. But of course, it has the chance to just break lower. But at this point, I'm at break even. I'm just going to be methodical and move with things. It didn't get to a point yet where it made sense for me to tighten up and get out. Obviously, if it just rips lower and knocks me out at break even, that's going to suck. Kind of had that similar on Friday. But that's just where this market is really tricky and where I've been more cautious to jump in on trades because actually managing them and actually getting out for a good amount has just been really difficult. There's clearly moves that do happen, but when they're unclear that they are going to happen, and then when kind of something a little more clear sets up, it just goes into chop mode. 5 minute, we're kind of on the NASDAQ. We're kind of just testing this area, this like previous low. Basically popping up and testing that total big picture spot to reverse. And so I don't want to get married to the trade. I still like it to the upside if this holds. This could just be a little flush lower, testing this trend line. And if it pops up, great, we're still in it. It's hard just sitting here, not really having much to do. Take profit and walk away for the day. I would love to. I just need it. It was really, especially on the ES, you can really see this, is it was just breaking above this to where, to me, if it's going to start accelerating, it could have done that. And so getting out here, obviously in hindsight, if this just rips lower, would have been a genius move. But to me, it's like, I'm looking for this bottom to accelerate up. And so I don't want to get too micro focused on the micro moves until I get to an actual, and not necessarily even risk reward, because sometimes with a wider stop, you don't want to get married to looking for 2 or 3x every time. You also need to respect, okay, what is the market going to actually give me today? And in terms of reversal, I don't think we're done. I think up here is where we could start to, if it's going to reverse and push up to the highs, I think this is where we'll start to run into resistance. And so here we're just in the middle of it. And so I don't want to get too crazy. Hey, poolside trader, awesome to hear you got a win. Hopefully things are going to stay together for my trade. Doesn't really look like it. The ES had a good bait higher, and this is why I moved my stop to break even, right? I waited for this pullback, and then we pushed a new high, and then I think that's where I like to move my stop, because it could pull back here and continue higher, but when it makes new highs, to me, that signals that this is a solid low to move my stop to, and so that's how I like to methodically do it. And so that's where I think this low is a solid one to have my stop at. Do I go live every day? Yes, I do. Kind of a new thing. Been doing it for what, a month and a half now, I think. But I trade 4 to 5 days a week. Pretty much just trading my reversal strategy every single day. If you go to my channel, I have a lot of good tutorials on a lot of that stuff. On how futures work, how my strategy works, what I'm looking for. Yeah. Gonna be a bummer to see this go break even, because I thought it looked really good to just slowly grind higher, but that's a hard part about these slowly grind higher trades too, which is why I call them B setups compared to these, because they just don't play out very fast. And the chance for them to kind of do this and sell off is a lot higher. So got to break even there. Bummer. But I don't think there was really much anything else to do. I think the entry was totally fine. I don't think there was anything else. I think this was just a risk of the trade, is that it pops up here, tests these lows, and continues this trend down. But that happened, and I was able to go break even before that happened. And I think the potential to, if we did reverse, could have got, a good risk reward. And so that's where, it's not about winning every trade. It's about executing when the setup is there, when it makes sense, and when the risk reward is there, and letting it play out over time. And to me, jumping out at 1x here just did not make sense. I have been realizing that I do need to trail up quicker in this market. especially on these trades, but it just did not make sense to do that yet. You know, if I jumped out here and it pulled back to this trend line and just shot up and kept going up, I would have felt like an idiot. And I don't think it made sense to take a partial either. So that's about it. I'm going to call it there for the day. Definitely a long trade. Difficult to hold through the initial pullback. You know, still only Tuesday, still got plenty of time. I do think be careful the rest of the day with FOMC tomorrow and Nvidia earnings. And tomorrow, I would assume it's going to be similar in terms of some volatility and then maybe potentially just chop fest. Probably more than today. So I'll see everyone tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, 30 minutes before the market opens. And I need to go reset. I need to go chill because that was definitely a long trading day, intense. And just gotta approach every day with trying to reset and focus on what matters and what you're trying to do. So hope that was helpful. I appreciate everyone being here as always. Hope everything was helpful. And if you need more explanation on my strategy or futures, go check out my YouTube videos on my channel. So I hope everyone has a good rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.